Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Today, life is moving me to give an episode on the biggest problems of the human species. So, as a starting point, first of all, this is a coffee shop Wi Fi episode. Okay. All right. So, I was looking into this website called ChatGPT. Somebody introduced me to this. And it's, this phenomenal free AI program, I guess. So I went on this chat GPT and I searched what are the biggest problems of humanity. And so these are the list. It created a list. I'm gonna read the list pretty much and then talk about the topics. So it says first, here, I'll just read it. It says there are many problems facing humanity and it is difficult to identify the biggest ones. That means it's difficult to identify which out of all the problems the human species has is the biggest one. But this is the list I'm going to read. And I've decided to consider that those people, I don't know who life will bring to these Mr. Within talks. Whose ears my voice will find. But the point of this channel, this talk, and everything is just the effort of the species towards the greater potential of its advancement. So, whoever you are, this YouTube channel is for universal beings, beings that are not afraid of being responsible for their universal sector. Okay? So, here's the list. I want to keep going with the list. So, it says some of the problems that are often considered to be among the biggest facing humanity include climate change. The Earth's climate is changing at an alarming rate, and human activity is a major contributing factor. This is leading to more extreme weather events, rising sea levels, and other impacts that are threatening communities and ecosystems around the world. So, yeah, if sea levels are rising, I mean, we don't want fish to take over. So, climate change. Then it says poverty. Many people around the world live in poverty without access to basic necessities such as clean water, education, and healthcare. War and conflict. There are many ongoing conflicts around the world that are causing suffering and loss of life. These conflicts are often fueled by a variety of factors, including political, economic, and cultural differences. It says health pandemics, inequality, food security, lack of access to education, corruption, environmental degradation, mental health, aging populations, overpopulation, terrorism, cybersecurity, political polarization. Sorry, guys. You know, these talks are I guess we use our life force for some purpose. And when it comes to the problems facing humanity, I was looking at this list and I was asking myself, what's the common denominator? What are simple solutions to all these problems? Right? And I realized these problems are arising from the minds of human beings and the minds of, excuse me, it's all behavioral to some degree. For example, we look at it, this is why I was saying, like, you know, talking about the great attitude shift or when the human species changes its attitude. Where's the. So, environmental degradation, deforestation, it's just what we are valuing. I think all the problems of the human species are from, in some sense, conflicted value systems, right? That means people have their own stories on what reality is and is valuable, and everybody's fighting for their own story to some degree. I mean, in the political arena, it's like this, right? Nations have their own interests in mind, right? But what sort of shift, like what needs to change out of the human species to assist these problems? You know, like how many people think about the problems that the human species faces? We're all trying to solve problems on our own individual level, and then wondering when are the collective problems going to be solved. The issue, one can say the biggest, let's say, speed bump, or how would I say it? What can I say? You know, there's three levels to life. Pretty much things get created, things are maintained, and things get destroyed. The human species wants to reduce the destructiveness, increase the constructiveness, and maintain things efficiently. The biggest issue is that there's a conflict of interest of two types or two ways we see ourselves. You see, every person, contrary to popular belief, isn't just one character in one story. Okay, there's an inner life, there's an outer life. Events happen quicker behind our eyes before we act upon them, which then converts them into reality. So, really, what it is that if we look at human decision making, all of humanity's problems are because of its decisions. Really, that's what civilization is. What fascinated me about even studying civilizations, and it broke my heart when I realized like Kardashev was one of the only people who had talked about advanced civilizations. Do you know? I mean, there are science fiction writers, but usually it's like one person finds something new and everybody chews on it, you know? So it's as if this is my approach, pretty much my, let's say, lines of reasoning and code. How I'm approaching it is like this. I'm like, okay, there's a situation. The situation is planet Earth. And then I ask myself, okay, what's happening on this? What is this situation? So I found this list of the biggest problems that the humanity is facing. Okay, sorry guys. I have to force myself to take like a year off from these talks, and usually it goes a couple months, and then I get pulled back into giving them. So, anyways, what is my approach, my view? Pretty much, there's a planet, Earth. What's the situation? 8 billion human beings have recently attained, they've acquired language, self awareness, consciousness, developed technologies, gone through various karmic events to kind of have what we have now. And so when I wonder about the problems of humanity, my attention goes to the behavior of humanity. And when I wonder where the behavior of humanity arises from, it arises from the inner dimensions of the human being. So something has to internally shift for there to be an external shift. Okay? But now the challenge is we are not taught how to internally shift. Okay, maybe throughout life, it's like after years pass by, you suddenly, you learn to find that calmness within yourself with events. So it's behavior. Behavior is internal. What is internal is view. So really what's going on here is how is this conscious entity viewing the world and then valuing that view to behave in it. So all these issues that are coming, and the list is huge. It's not just like these 15 things I've read. We have the option of physically changing, objectively changing the world in front of our eyes. And we have the opportunity, the ability to internally change. I mean, how would I say it? Like, I can physically move and move stuff around physically, or I can close my eyes and internally entertain different viewpoints. So, what it is that the mind is an image generating sort of device. I shouldn't say device, but it's a technology that sees image, has the image echo through the filters of all the memories it has, and then it acts again. You see, the coolest thing about the human being is that it's a process. And because to be a human being is a process, a sort of symbiosis with the world and everything in it and everything behind your eyes and the inner worlds, right? It's as if, you know what it is? It's as if the human being is sandwiched between an internal, infinite, subjective reality and a finite, external, objective reality. External, objective reality. It's like we have two eyes that see the same moment, and we have two dimensions that are being the mystery of consciousness. So I'm here as this human being, and I'm like, oh my God, human beings need to change their behavior. They need to be more conscious, more responsible. But how can we get human beings more responsible of a world they dislike? And so the idea is that as more advancement occurs in the world and as more problems are solved, the civilization will experience efficiency. What is going on is that we should be 8 billion problem solvers of all the dimensions of human civilization, but the issue is that we're all trying to be like one thing, you know. For me, I thought about, like, you know, the atheist and the theist debating online, and the theist was like, why believe in a narrative, you know, that you can't verify or you can't empirically know? Like, why believe in subjects that you can't empirically know? And at the same time, how many subjects are we believing in that empirically we don't know? People don't realize space is watching itself through the conditions of a body. It's space. We are space. We're not in space. We are this space. That's the point of the mind. The body is here to allow us to experience matter. The mind is here to allow us to experience the space where the matter is moving. So really what's going on here is that we have a biological system capable of creating space for itself. So that means there's a creature on a rock in an unknown world, and it's going on writing its diary of memories through every experience it goes through, and it has its experiences to work with. Just like you teach an alphabet to a child and then the child can access words and learn about words, similarly, all the experiences we've gone through is in some sense has created a sort of alphabet of, in some sense, in how in every moment we can literally create ourselves or project a word. So think of it this way, that your memories in this lifetime are the alphabet, and your personality is in some sense the word that the alphabet creates, right? And then the words become sentences, sentences become paragraphs, and then the personality has a story that is like a world it can rely on, right? So the question goes, how do we change our attitude? You know, Leo Tolstoy said something incredible. He wrote this letter, and in the letter he was saying how the Russian Tsar in the Russo-Japanese wars, the Russian Tsar was like, you know, God's on our side, you know, God's with our empire, and the Japanese, you know, leaders were like, the universe is on our side and whatnot, you know. So what it is that it's one-sided behavioralism, right? And our species hasn't learned to, rather than unconsciously reacting savagely to unfamiliar situations, to consciously familiarize oneself with the situation, you know. There's this thing I was hearing about Manly P. Hall. He was saying you shouldn't judge people, but you can always judge the relationships. You know, that means it's as if we as human beings, there's a sort of beautiful existential value to all of us being here. But how our existence is used by our experience suggests what kind of being we are, you know? Like, for example, in this lifetime so far, sometimes I think about this, like if I was to exit the dimension right now, right? Like if something happened and I had to like leave this world, I would notice that what sort of expression was the defining moment. That means, what out of this lifetime did we truly become? You know, what do we know if we suddenly entered the unknown? And you know, for me, it's kind of like, you know, sometimes in life you're looking for freedom for yourself, but then you realize that freedom only comes if you give freedom to the world. You know, it's funny. It's like not only do we have to free ourselves from the world, but we have to free the world from ourselves. From ourselves that hasn't noticed where it's going. I wonder truly, like, what has shifted my attitude in life? What made me care for the future? And you know what? I think it's like, thinking about it now, I feel slightly a bit sad about it. But I think what it was was that my consciousness did not find contentment with the dimensions that it was functioning through until it realized those dimensions are depending on the conscious source. You see, one of the most complex things back in the day, children were forced, like literally imagined kingdoms were at war. Men would pick up swords and go to battle, right? It was as if like force was accept the contentment with intensity was so superior back in the day. You know, back in the day, we were truly objective warriors. Now we have become subjective warriors. And technology is literally replacing our physicalism. You know, sometimes I think, what if super intelligent computers in the future, they just treat human beings as information? Information that was produced non-mechanically, you know? Non-technologically, like machine. You know, there was a time where I wondered, like, you know, my mind projected this question, and I was like, universe, why have you created a spectrum of different capabilities of entities? Do you know? Why have you created a gazelle and why have you created a lion? Do you know? Why have you created the human being and why have you created a planet, for example? You see, like, there's mysteries in nature that their explanations can only come through a collective perception, you know? There's something strange. I think the human species has made the error of thinking that physicalism, that materialism is the only containment of life, right? Like, we think biological intelligence is conscious, is aware, and it has a soul, but we don't look at like a metal fence or like a parked car and be like, yo, does that car have a soul? Does that metal fence have a soul? But when we truly discover that the nature of the mind is solipsist a bit, so what it means is that the world is giving you the stuff, the shapes, and your mind is accepting the shapes or connotating them or giving them meaning, right? So what it is that our inner life is giving meaning to our outer life, but our inner life doesn't have shapes, so it relies on the shapes of the outer life. Do you know? The mind is very fascinating because it's not just working on the level of information. The mind is aware of the information and strategizes. Our brains are strategy generators. And confidence is when you have found the appropriate tactics to implement your strategy. When it comes to an attitude shift, when I look at the significant moments in my life, it has been an acceptance of my worthlessness. Anytime I have felt worthless, it has been a moment where life is like, okay, you got lucky. The transparency of your ego is like, your ego is 10% transparent. Wonder about what else you were before you statuized yourself in your emotion, through your emotion. To shift attitude is another way of saying, what does the context mean? Do you know? For example, a bunch of people are happy celebrating, right? And then somebody shouts, tsunami! The context of the moment changes, the behaviors instantly change. And you know, wisdom seems to be an ability to learn from the first mistake. I don't know. You know, there's moments where I feel like, you know, there's an animalistic component to the human species. Does it mean it deserves the destiny of an animal? You know, and should the human species even care to explore greater dimensions? You know, it's like, how willing are we as creatures in a world to have the world look differently to us? When I was in film school, one of my teachers came and said something very important to me. And he said, be careful you don't fall in love with your own idea. You know, and I was like, buddy, it's too late. But really what my teacher was saying was that it is a capable being that can administer trust and doubt at correct times. And you know, I think this is a sort of mini sacrifice maybe that psychologically happens. If we want to be comfortable, we miss out on new dimensions. So comfort is a closed system, discomfort is an open system. And so think of it this way. Let's say you're a person right now in the world, in some poverty-stricken country, some messed up situations, and you're like, Mr. Within, I got so many problems, I don't even have time to sit down and meditate, you know? And I will tell you, think of it this way, that first of all, your meditation is your life's work. It's not just sitting down, it's your rhythm. It's how you accept the potential of your world. And so the more problems you have, logically it means the more experiences of new discomforts you have. And so all discomforts there's the contrast position. So for example, I'll give you an example. Right now I'm a person who's smoking. You know, the contrast would be like, how would I feel if I hadn't smoked? You know? Or how would I feel if I don't smoke? You know? What I'm trying to say is like the problems are there. Sometimes we're stuck in it, but the problem has a geometry. If you look at the geometry of the problem, sometimes the contrast, the opposite of that geometry can act as a working solution. So think of it this way. The most uncomfortable person in the world has an ability to experience the greatest comfort. And the most comfortable people on the world have the ability to experience the greatest discomfort. An example of this was Buddha. Buddha Gautama Siddhartha was the son of a prince. He was born in an empire, and when he was born, he had like some wheel birthmark on his foot, and his father, who was an emperor, asked this holy man, like, yo, what does this mean? My child has a birthmark on its foot. And the holy man's like, your child's either going to become a very, you know, holy man, spiritual sage, like spiritual leader, or he's going to become an emperor like you. And the emperor's like, good answer. I would have killed you if you had said, the other. Right? So the holy man gives a smart answer. And so what the emperor does is that he chooses to hide his son, the Buddha, the prince's eyes, from the hardships of reality. And so, especially now, as human consciousness has increased, and who was it? There was a very important religious figure who had said something in the lines of like, women women are the mothers of humanity. Do you know? It's a system wherein the system has behavior We take parts of the system, like we don't record every angle of the moment, but consciousness gives us certain angles. So let's say if there's 10, let's say a person goes through 10, let's say a person goes through 10 moments. In the first moment they got, let's say the first moment had 10, let's say that a person goes through 10 moments and each moment has 10 angles you can look at it, for example, hypothetically. So it would be as if one moment we got 2 angles out of 10 angles, the other moment we got 3 out of 10, then we got 5 out of 10, then we got 1 out of 10, then we got 10 out of 10. Do you see what I'm saying? So we are not experiencing or having enough access to all the information to live a life that is just satisfied by calculation, even though calculation and metrics are important. You know, I see a lot of spiritual and spiritual religious people who, like, I remember once I was talking about the idea of evolution and this kid was like, bro, you believe in evolution? And I'm like, yeah, man. I put my palms on the ground and it made sense to me, you know. What changes a person's attitude is where they feel they can be seen. We have an inner life, the purpose of our inner life. I don't know why we're designed like this. I don't know why. I think it's the body. I think it's a chemical reason, right? But we are designed to, maybe this would be an appropriate term, to penetrate reality. We are designed as an intelligence that tunnels through self-simulation. And so when the self is identified, like imagine you're somebody, you've sat down, you've closed your eyes, and after like 10 to 20 minutes, you're like, wait a minute, when I am not moving, what is movement? And you discover that nature is your whole moment. We are moments of being where the human framework is through dualistic conditioning found inside it. We are moments of being. We are not just human beings. We are being human. Maybe I should give a talk called From Human Beings to Being Human. I looked up something I'm going to read for the viewers. Pretty much, I looked up how to change attitude. How does a person change their attitude? I mean, the obvious answer is change your outer environment. If you can't change your outer environment, change your inner environment. Attitude is actually shifting your inner environment. If you can't shift it, you got to change physically, right? But the thing about attitude is more. I have this view that our outer life is trying to live a successful physical life. That means we are this intelligence that is strategizing to, in some sense, live an efficient physical life. But when it comes to trying to live an inner life, that's pretty much the attitude shift. And so I think really when you experience something new, that's when your attitude changes. If you haven't experienced something new, then how can you change your attitude? You don't know what else is there. And you know, at the end of this life, there's an empty-handedness, it seems. It's like poker, you know? We are born, we're given hands, We look at our cards, we decide what to do with them in contrast to the conditions of the world. Then we either fold, which is we become hopeless, or we go all in, which is we become hopeful. And at the end of it, we see a result, and then the next game begins. So I think the perhaps a method, an approach to step out of samsaric cyclical existence is to wonder how your attitude is creating meaning for you. Because if I don't speak, existence is its own meaning in the silence, in the stillness. You know, if somebody's sitting still, nobody says, "What are you doing?" You know, it's like the person's just it's just they're actually doing nothing. You know. So what it is dynamism leads to the conscious identification of life. And it could be that people who think, you know, they're suffering, it's the speed. You know, you might be going too slow, too fast. You know, you might believe in an idea without realizing the future's filled with surprises. You may think, you know, you may think you're alone in this world. But our mind is here actually to get rid of that loneliness. Intelligence wants to comprehend itself in greater movement. Here it says, there are many ways to change your attitude. Identify the cause of your negative attitude. Is there a specific event or situation that is causing you to feel negative? If so, try to identify the root cause and come up with a plan to address it. That means identify why your attitude is a certain way and then use your life force to resolve it. Practice gratitude. Focus on the things you're grateful for can help shift your perspective and improve your attitude. Guys, gratitude is one of the best feelings ever. And usually people know what I mean when something like intense happens and they somehow survive, you know? But gratitude is as if like the world still wants us here, you know? The world, it's as if like being grateful for that there is anything at all. Being grateful how there's so many people that don't exist and have never existed or will never exist. Here it says, surround yourself with positive people. The people you spend time with can have a big impact on your attitude. Try to surround yourself with people who are positive and supportive. To be honest, we're living in a world where a lot of people will not be supportive unless they're getting something out of it. This is what I've noticed, right? We're creatures in the game of, value accumulation. But I would say if somebody feels equal, right? If you feel equal to someone, it's very easy to be supportive, you know? If you're above people, it's also easy to be supportive. But if you are below a certain, that means it's like, imagine a millionaire and a billionaire, okay? And so the billionaire is open to supporting the millionaire. Maybe the millionaire isn't open to supporting the billionaire, for example. Do you know? But I don't know. I mean, human beings want to advance. I think everything is going towards ability. I think what nature wants to see from the human species is how skillful they are. The future of civilization is going to, I think that what's going to become very See, it's a value system. What that means is in 2023, what do human beings value? In the 2000s, what did human beings value? In, I don't know, like 1800s, what did human beings value? So the value system is changing. New behaviors are entering the system. New human beings are entering the system, which is another way of saying new approaches to the world. Some people wonder why. Like, I don't think people know this, but when the first late night shows, like the talk shows, were being made, right? The early TV companies were like, who's gonna watch people talk? Like, who wants to hear people talking, right? And so they were against the idea, but then it became the huge thing, and we realized that human beings are fascinated to know how other human beings are functioning. We are fascinated with the function of what we are. You see? And now we've reached an incredible time where, to me, I think, there's times where I think the internet came too soon, but at other times I look at it and I'm like, okay, human beings were cultivating, literally think of it this way, we're these containers and we've been filling up our minds with events and self-simulations of ourselves and everything throughout life. And then all this built up momentum, as if you've held the band of the slingshot like for really back. I don't know, I mean, when I was a child I would make slingshots. I think people nowadays don't do that. Do you know? The world became soft because people became stronger. And it became soft because people realized that the intensities they went through, others did not need to experience. But the issue is that the world is becoming so safe. I mean, I shouldn't say the world is becoming so safe. I mean, it's never the case. But I'll say it this way, that to me it feels that human beings, what used to be the masculine aggression, right? That masculine aggression has been taken away because human beings now have laws. We have subjects that protect us. It's not just objects. And in the future, who knows? Everybody might have an android walking behind them. Do you know? Who knows? A little kid might be able to go to the grocery store in the worst neighborhood, right? Like, I saw this video, there was this kid with his dog outside, and this other dog comes to attack the kid, and the dog defends the kid. The dog of the kid defends the kid from another dog. Like, it was an epic video, right? So similarly, I find that this is going to happen through technology. Right? There's going to be androids. There's going to come a time where to be a biological, let's say, strong physical individual is going to become meaningless because technology is replacing that. Do you know? What I'm trying to say is that the world is prioritizing subjective emotional experience over natural outer realm objective existence. So what it is that as human beings are becoming more intelligent, they are relying on their intelligence to, in some sense, you know what it is? It's as if we used to do things ourselves, but now we've built tools, and now we're building tools that will update themselves to such a degree that we probably won't have to do anything, right? That means there may come a time, let's say a couple hundred years from now, where, it's like a human being will be like, yo, man, I think the last time I picked up an object was 20 years ago. Imagine all the objects can fly towards you. Imagine you're late in the morning and you're running out of your house, and your keys, your glasses, your coffee, everything just floats towards you as you're running out the door, and they just come to your hand and pockets. Right? Imagine in your jacket you press a button and everything that's like already typed into your jacket, like you've put it in the program, everything comes into your pockets. Do you know? Like, in the future, jackets might be able to just hover. Like, you don't have to put your jacket on a coat rack or on a tree branch, Here it says, engage in activities that bring you joy, practice mindfulness, be present in the moment, focusing on your thoughts and feelings can help you become more aware of your attitude and how it is affected by your thoughts and actions. Seek help if needed. If you're struggling with a negative attitude and it is impacting your daily life, consider seeking help from a mental health professional. Yeah, there's always human beings that are outside, that could be outside of the problems we're experiencing or who have gone through those problems. So, really, the reason we can communicate is to help each other with the knowledge we have. It's pretty much an effort of globalizing the wisdom of the inner realms externally. That's what's happening in civilization, I think. So, it's important to shift our attitude, and our attitude naturally shifts. And don't think that, I'm just because somebody talks about something like, they are free from it. There are many things that I have, how would I say it? Like, every person has certain limits. If they are honest, they can honor their limitations. They can learn to accept their limitations. But if they are dishonest, they forget to accept what they have been, or like how they feel, right? I shouldn't say how they feel, because feelings change, but right now I have this vision, since 2014. Like in 2014, there were these benches. I would walk on these, there were these benches without a backside, right? Without without a back. And so I would walk on these benches as if they were a podium at night in this accommodation place I was in Birmingham, UK, when I started the Mr.Within talks. And I would go walk on those benches as if they were a podium, and I would fathom, it was at night where nobody was there, and I would fathom the grass. There was this grass field, and I would fathom as if each straw of grass is an audience member sitting in front of me. That was like the playfulness of my mind, right? And there is emotions that I feel are there. There's like forces within the human being that the person has not made them conscious, so it remains as an emotion. So imagine somebody told you, like, don't go to a neighborhood, okay? And you said okay, and you forgot what they said, years passed by, and you found yourself going to that neighborhood, and you're like, why do I feel something is off? Why do I feel like I shouldn't be here? Right? And then the person can't remember the sentence the person had told them years ago of don't go to that neighborhood, but they feel the sentence. And there is pretty much like if we were a car behind the hood, underneath the hood, right? The engine is very complex, very multifaceted, very multidimensional, and oftentimes the human, it's like we have been given the privilege to, consciousness has been given the privilege to experience itself as a noun and a verb. Our belief systems are how we convert the world into a photograph. We convert truth into just an image we hang on our wall and worship image, right? But beyond worshiping an image is in some sense abidance. There was a time where I was like, is this it, cosmos? We just have to endure inefficiency till we die? And I don't know, There's been moments where, years of my life, where I felt like, my parallel selves are living differently in other dimensions. What it is we are a presence. What I'm going to say is pretty abstract. Don't take it too seriously. But there was a time where I felt like the logos that I am like giving these talks through is like a group of time travelers from the year 2574 or something, right? Like the mind is so fascinating because it wants to make sense to itself, right? And it has to, in some sense, connect image to other image. It's fascinating. Our brains are adorably trying to figure out what they're looking at. Okay, Um, I don't know what else to say. I'm gonna go to quotes. Let's read some attitude quotes. Quote tunnel. And of course, keep in mind, something I say in these Mr. Within talks is that we're alive, like the life, let's say we have 100 years as this energy, as this container of this life force. And so, in these 100 years, what Mr. Within is saying is that all human species wonder about what your most advanced version is. That means in this life, you know, try to like have the fascination to get to see the most advanced state of your being. I am tired of anguish. I am tired of hopelessness. I'm tired of hope even. Right? Like it's like the species has been having hope for like, till the end, from the beginning of time. The hope never finishes. It's all action, implementation, and attitude shift and archetypal role selection. We need the geniuses on this planet to, in some sense, group up and begin to wonder about all the archetypal positions that an advanced civilization requires. And then those archetypal roles, the moment at least a group of people decide something, its reality emerges in the outer realms. We are very blessed to be alive at a time where we can be the multidimensional designers of one of the most incredible civilizations in the universal sector. Imagine 8 billion, imagine there was a team of 8 billion and more like advanced extraterrestrials that would go on, like imagine there was like let's say there were like billions of extraterrestrials, like this giant team, this giant crew, and these extraterrestrials would go to planets and they would in some sense incarnate from within the planet to outside of the planet. That means rather than coming down from the sky, they went to the center of the earth, imagine, poetically or playfully, like, and then, right? So imagine 10 billion advanced beings being like, all right, let's go build an advanced civilization on this planet. And one by one, they all forget themselves to be able to remember something, a new self, let's say from a unified perspective. I had a dream, not a dream, just a moment where I felt like I was gonna die, right? It was weird. I was just like in my home, and just for a second, my head went back. I felt like, I felt like I'm falling from behind. My head went back, but I was just standing there, and I felt for a second my attention was like being pulled out from. It was weird. It was as if there was a Gasper kind of like soul, like the Casper movie, right? It was as if I felt like something. My attention was like being pulled out of my body from behind, right, from above my head, right? I had that kind of feeling. Got a sense of like panic that was so out of like nowhere, right? And then I remember I had this experience. I felt like, oh my God, am I leaving? Like, what is this? And then I called my father and I asked him, like, how do you look at life? Like, I had this kind of experience of death. Like, what's your attitude towards it or something? And my father said something so fascinating. He said to me that if you get an actual experience of your attention being outside of your body, you don't fear what happens to the body. But because you think you're just the body, the value of the whole moment is limited to just the dualistic dimension. He didn't say it like that, but he was telling me he was telling me pretty much that if you experientially find a contentment of an unknown state beyond yourself, then you will not fear. Just like Tony Stark didn't have like an existential crisis when he stepped out of the Iron Man suit, right? That sort of answer. And I was like, it makes sense because the mind is not an object. So the fear of the mind for an object to no longer be an object doesn't make sense in the first place. If the essence of us is not an object. And what are emotions? Like some people, who was it? I think it was Manly P. Hall. He was saying something like a lot of people at the end of their life on their deathbed, the biggest regret they have is that they weren't kinder. whoever you are, if you're definitely a young person on this planet, we have a choice. It's like an all-you-can-eat buffet. You have a choice of different behaviors you can select. And I would say that what kindness means is learning that big projects such as worldhood are not done alone. This is one of the biggest things I have to learn in this life, because since childhood, I've been kind of like, imagine a wolf with a turtle's shell, or imagine a lion with a turtle's shell. You know, it's like, you know, sometimes the lion goes inside the turtle's shell, and there's other times where the turtle's roaring, you know. So my thing is, I know this. I just intuitively know this, that I've manifested here to experience divinity, not just within myself, to not experience the unknown. You know, let's say the unknown mover within that is accompanying us. Human species is in a symbiosis with an interdimensional field of being. We think that field of being is God, and it is important to honor it, but the biggest realization of God, and I'm a bit of a maverick here, this is my approach. I feel, for me, I was raised in a theocratical society, so I had to articulate the concept of a monotheistic truth that is inconceivable. So I was like this kid raised in a theocracy in Iran, and I was like, okay, everybody's being religious, but where is everybody's attention going? And what blew my mind when I was young was that everybody was worshiping an inconceivable truth, not a conceivable truth. You see, measurement, calculation, these are conceivable truths. But it was as if it was religion was kind of like noticing the inconceivable within all conception, right? Something in those lines, more of an experiential journey rather than an indirect, calculation. Okay. Our attitude is a decision. And you as a person may think, like, even if you decide something subconsciously, you might have not decided it. But I'm telling you, we are designed to choose. And a lot of ideological systems, they make us think that we're being good, humble people by not living freely. Do you know? In life, I think to maintain something that I was from the beginning. The concept of decency, virtue, these are things you're trying to hold from the beginning, like an honorable person, right? But at the same time, life is designed so that the beginning is not the end. Because that would have been weird, Who was it? This comedian, George Carlin, such a deep thinker. He was saying this thing, imagine life was different. Imagine you were born as an old man and every day you were getting younger and eventually you became like a baby. Okay, onwards to the quote tunnel about attitude. Albert Einstein, weakness of attitude becomes weakness of character. Very true. John C. Maxwell, people may hear your words, but they feel your attitude. Zig Ziglar, your attitude, not your aptitude, will determine your altitude. Yeah, your attitude is pretty much what sort of energy is your mind bringing to the moment. Like, do you trust your energy as a being? Or do you distrust your energy? And if you distrust it, why? Why are you being something that you distrust? Lou Holt says, ability is what you're capable of doing. Motivation determines what you do. Attitude determines how well you do it. What a great quote. Marcus Aurelius says, reject your sense of injury and the injury itself disappears. That means even if you get injured, you don't need to subjectively, suffer. You could just be like, okay, something happened, onwards. It's like, what does tomorrow want that yesterday couldn't give? Ralph Marston, excellence is not a skill, it's an attitude. I don't know if I read this. Winston Churchill, attitude is a little thing that makes a big difference. David Bailey, a positive attitude can really make dreams come true. It did for me. Charles R. Swindoll. We cannot change our past. We cannot change the fact that people act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing that we can do is play on the one string we have, and that is our attitude. Yeah, I mean we can change. The issue is the world ready? I think one of the most important things when it comes to, let's say, collective change is the wisdom they would give in martial arts. When the student is ready, the master appears. When the species is ready, an advanced civilization appears. Right now, this is my observation, that the species is ready to hear the songs of the advanced civilization. It's ready to subjectively confront the advanced civilization, but objectively we have not become responsible for it yet. And you know, I have this feeling, not only that this YouTube channel is necessary to be heard by every human being and beings in this universal sector, but that the motivation of the calling. So what it is that why is there like, imagine there's a flame, right? There's a campfire in the forest, and we human beings are like, yo, there's no people there. It's just the fire appeared out of nowhere. No. There is intent prior to the mind's biological ability to interpret the intent. What that means is before you were a person, you were a force of a field's attitude. What that means is like an ocean was choosing how to evaporate itself into a drop, so evaporate itself, and so then in some sense there's precipitation, and then in some sense individual existence. So what is going on is like oceans are becoming drops, and drops are going back into the ocean. Collective beings are experiencing individualism, individuals are experiencing collectivism, until we can comfortably be content with our collective being and our individual being. Somebody may be like, you look at him and you're like, yo, this guy, you know, this man is enlightened, or this woman is so enlightened, you know. But they are self-enlightened. That means they have freed their being from what their self has to be without them thinking about it. They release themselves from the enforcement of the necessity of subjective selfhood before objective being. But now this has to happen on a collective level. So what that means is an advanced civilization requires an advanced trust. Advanced systems are advanced from the beginning. I asked the Logos, how do we build an advanced civilization when there's so much inefficiency? And the answer was that it has to be advanced from the beginning. So what it is that the attitude has to know and has to be able to instantaneously feel and know, and then it's authorized to be. It's about knowing it. Like if you are someone who's kicked a soccer ball, you know it, right? When I was I don't know, I think I was like 16. There was this I was living in what's the place? Like Young and Clark. Okay, in Thornhill, this place called Thornhill in Canada. And there was this soccer field, and they had these kind of just like this soccer post, which was just this metal bar that was a rectangle. And I remember at the time I was playing soccer, and I would go there, and my favorite soccer player was, one of my favorite players was Ronaldo and Quaresma. And Quaresma had similar play style as Cristiano Ronaldo, but he was known for this technique called the Rabona, which means that you pretty much place the soccer ball beside your left foot, and then with your right foot from behind your left foot you kick the ball. right? So I remember I was doing this and I kick the ball and it hits the crossbar, and there was a person there in the park and he was like, "Oh, whoa, can you do that again?" And I didn't have confidence. It's really, experience cultivation. We're cultivating experiences of ways that life can happen, really. So your attitude is pretty much how you feel about how everything has treated you so far. And if you can't forgive the world, most likely you can't forgive yourself. But if you can forgive the world, if you can be like, even though there's so many messed up stuff happening on the planet, this is like the best the species can do so far. This is the first prototype. There has to be like an infinite being's patience when it comes to building something incredibly advanced. Aldous Huxley. The secret of genius is to carry the spirit of the child into old age, which means never losing your enthusiasm. Brian Tracy, you cannot control what happens to you, but you can control your attitude toward what happens to you, and in that you will be mastering change rather than allowing it to master you. Edwin Lewis Cole says, attitude determines the attitude of life. Thomas Jefferson says, nothing can stop the man with the right mental attitude from achieving his goal. Nothing on earth can help the man with the wrong mental attitude. Aeschylus, it is in the character of very few men to honor without envy a friend who has prospered. And you know how this becomes easy, guys? When you realize that you are expecting the victory of the species. That means you shouldn't be just happy that one person prospered. You should have the happiness of like, when is the species going to prosper? We want the ultimate win-win because we're conscious and can attempt for it. Norman Vincent Peale. Watch your manner of speech if you wish to develop a peaceful state of mind. Start each day by affirming peaceful, contented, and happy attitudes, and your days will tend to be pleasant and successful. Colin Powell, if you're going to achieve excellence in big things, you develop that habit in little matters. Excellence is not an exception, it is a prevailing attitude. This is very important because excellence being an attitude means that even if you're alone, that excellence should be there. To be excellent means that we had a vision and we managed to go forward with the vision. And things, their value is different. Right now, when I think about what are the value of these Mr.Within talks, they have a value for me who's giving them, and they have 8 billion different types of values. That means, like, here, let me check something. So here, I've gone to my channel. I'm going to go to the About. Here it says, the channel has had 156,116 views since 2014. So let's assume these are different people, each one of them. So it would be as if 156,116 people since 2014 have different views on who Mr.Within is. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's different versions of my voice being received by different ears of different people. And so how can I say the value of this? Like, for me, it has a value. Maybe for others, it has a value. For someone else, it may not have a value, Something that was very strange and hilarious when I started giving these talks, everybody around me, including my sibling, my parents, friends, distant even family who knew I was giving talks, nobody engaged. Nobody acted as if it was different, any different, you know? And so it was a spectacular opportunity for me to realize that we should not do things for others because the others come and go. But if we do things for ourself is there with us usually. I mean, in deep sleep maybe not, but usually it's there, right? But if you had to choose between doing something for yourself and others, imagine you could figure out a way to do something for yourself that was also efficient for others. Imagine we were living a win-win strategy of an individual life. The issue is the individual life only has value to us, and if there's others, sure, it has value to your partner and whatnot, right? But the idea is like context evaluation from different angles, do you know? It's like if you've ever, I mean, 100% people have experienced this, but if you've experienced a situation where you don't know why something happened and it happened, it's as if you're not looking at the situation from all angles, right? And that's really what spirituality is. Spirituality, or what the word metaphysics means, meta means after. And physics is the immediate information. So really what metaphysics could imply is not just that there's other other dimensions, but it could imply how a physical entity has a relationship with itself that seems to be what has come after its physical existence. So me being able to speak and communicate, it's not just the DNA. The DNA is like the microphone. What's speaking through it is I am more and more realizing it's an intent. It's not an object. Right? When I say there's dehumanized states, right? Dehumanized beings, it doesn't mean they have shape. It doesn't mean it's an alien with like a, that has a circular head or some shit, right? It's not like that. It's more like intent. So it's as if how is energy being released in space to then have some sort of where is the force for animation coming? And the force for animation comes through trust, and it's as if like this invisible, attributeless, unknown witness is trusting what it is to then create with it. Right? It's kind of like I am this, think of it this way, I'm like this field of intelligence, and I am using my body to create something I can control in this field of intelligence. So my biological existence is like the tool that my unknown, how do I say it? It's like in the silence and stillness, there is a self that is just how the whole moment is being. When we move and communicate, there's an individualized self. So it's kind of like the less you do, the more the world shows you what truth is. The more you do, the more you have to show yourself what truth is. Either way, whoever you are, cultivate contentment with your being. And if you can be grateful unconditionally, that means if you can be happy by just being here, by just being, not even doing anything, not even needing anything, by just being a being. If you can be grateful for this, you don't have to worry about meditation or spiritual practices. Just trust what you know you can love. Trust how would I say it? Trust how you're being, because if you don't, you can't see what you're being. And that's the importance of attitude. That means there seems to be like this inner dimension where we can have an attitude on which attitude we like to have. But anyways, there's mysteries that surround the human experience and existence. And it's our task to open our eyes in ways that they could never close. Thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. And if it wasn't helpful, change your attitude. Come on. It's like, imagine the person's like, there are some people who dislike me, but it's not them that they dislike me. They just have the wrong attitude. There was a time where I was thinking like, you know, what could I be like a very like I was thinking like, the context of narcissism, and then I realized I'm too silly, you know, to to be a narcissist. That means you're a narcissist if everything you see of yourself is like freaking perfect and great. But when I look at myself, I see like inefficiency and deficiency. Do you know what I'm saying? So in some sense, it's just worship. What worship is where is your attention locked on? Most human beings, due to our urge to survive, we have an obsession of self. Everybody is self-obsessed by starting in their own inner realms. And to be someone who can listen to another person's inner realm is an incredible ability, because it means that you have to step out of what the world means to you to come into a neutral space to be able to see what the world means to another person, right? I feel there is going to come a great attitude shift, because the human species is going to realize a lot of these major global problems are behavioral. That means our behavior is causing, influencing climate change. The behavior of people is suggesting whether they value themselves or not, right? Like, I thought about it that, children should be encouraged to trust life. Do you know? But when they're not taught, or how would I say it? It's as if like you trust life, then you experience a moment of distrust, then you're like, should I trust it again? And then you see there's a choice. If you distrust life, you don't get to live as your real self. And at the same time, if you trust life, there's moments where you're naive, right? So for me, I was like, I'd rather be the real me rather than just for a temporary time feel like, there was a sort of deceptive smartness, of like trying to get ahead. Like, it's like we're human beings. We are a worldly process. We're not designed to just, how would I say it? It's like we're here and we have a bunch of trainers. Okay? We are one of our own trainers. That means whoever you are one of your teachers. And if you don't respect the teacher, you'll never understand what the teacher is saying. Okay? So you are one of your teachers. Whoever you are listening to me, you are someone hilariously you can call for help, right? Yourself. That means your minds have been given, because the mind can solve problems. It can identify problems and then solve them. So every person has been given intelligence. I don't care who you are, and even if compared to others you feel you have less, compared to other animals, like compared to a freaking squirrel and a bird, right? The stupidest human being is the smartest creature compared, right? And there is no such thing as smart and human beings, because if the whole species messes up, we're all idiots. If the species makes an idiotic decision, there were never smart people here. Do you know? If the whole thing fails. But if the whole thing succeeds, everybody was, great. At least. They can at least feel. It's like when the soccer team wins, even the soccer players on the bench jump up with happiness. Do you know what I'm saying? When their team wins, even though they're not on the field. And so we need the same thing for the advanced civilization. I have this feeling, I don't know why, that I feel human beings have incredible abilities, but they are mispositioned. Imagine someone who's an incredible violinist is caught into playing drums. Imagine someone who's an incredible chef is like, forced to be a lumberjack, you know? So what I'm saying is like that's the thing about our minds. We have to trust life, we have to trust the forces of life, and then we have to also be conscious of the opportunities. I don't know who it was. Somebody had said something in the lines of like when you want something in life, life throws it near you, but it doesn't throw it in front of you. And then you got to use your mind to figure out if you're worthy of the experiences you want. A lot of people, like let's say somebody wants to, be something, right? In the inner realms, you can instantly think like be anything. Like we have actors who, like the actor could be male and completely act like a female. Do you know? The actor could be female, completely act like a male. Do you know? What does that mean? That means human beings are playing a subjective dress-up game, right? And so how we accept subjects and objects and their interlinking is really what's going on here. This is why I thought the name Mr. Within was pretty cool, right? Because the experience of the human being is happening within the brain. So how I know there's a world outside of me is because something is happening within me. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult for me to say if the world I'm seeing, if this is the world, or the world I've been seeing from the beginning of my life is me happening plus the world. To be a self is incredible, and to realize that the world is the greatest self. So anyways, thanks for listening. If there's any questions, feel free to ask. And try to think what I could say as a final point. I think the most advanced attitude, the strongest beings on the planet, they will realize benevolence is the archetype. For me, if you show me a benevolent person and then you show like a powerful dictator, I will tell you the benevolent person is so above, those who need to prove their power. Right? Because people don't know this. Like right now there's protests in Iran. And so what is that? It's as if like one person has chosen the boundaries of the freedom of thought for a group of people on the land, And the whole aim should be that we are trying to free ourselves through the expansion of consciousness. Impatience is, I think, how suffering begins. Impatience and acceptance of weakness. Impatience and acceptance of weakness, that's when you start feeling, that's when you get hurt, They say in Zen, to climb a mountain, start at the top. To build an advanced civilization in your inner realms, we're already in it. Because if the advanced civilization didn't exist, there would be no conceptual ambassador of it in our realm. Civilizations, societies, just like our technology, they're trying to replicate, mimic nature. And so I find that civilization will come across as a giant human being. Just like in the early shows when I was a kid, it was like Power Rangers. The Power Rangers each had their own like robot, and then all their robots would join and create a bigger robot. That bigger robot is the advanced civilization. And we need every human being to realize that you have an opportunity. The same energy it takes to instantaneously think you're weak, the same energy it takes to think you're strong. And sometimes in life, it's a feeling. If you feel strong, right, it's most likely coming from some experience. But sometimes if you decide something, life will give you experiences to validate it. Do you know? I remember in 2014, I decided I decided, I'm like, all right, let's give it a try. Let's give 10,000 talks. The moment I decided I was going to give 10,000 talks, I realized that one talk shouldn't feel hard to me. Giving a talk should feel in no way complex. Like it should be like a breath of air, you know? Like it should be super simple. And because I had this mentality, because the scale of what I was expecting out of the moment was so big, the small became easy to do. And sometimes in your life you feel bad and you suffer because you have not your expectations from yourself is too small. And if you expect something, that means if you try not to be one step ahead, if you try not to be two steps ahead, but if you try in anything you do, whatever craft field, if you try to be as far steps ahead as if you want to be, you want to access the newest vision in that field, right? Then you realize, okay, if I'm going to do something 10,000 times, it doesn't make sense in doing it once to feel nervous at all, right? So it's the context, the scale of your vision will suggest how strong your attitude is. Or that quote I was reading right now, what was it? It said your attitude, who was it? What's his name? Edwin Lewis Cole, attitude determines the altitude of life. So I'm saying the bigger the challenge, the greater strength that's needed. Just like the heavier the object, the greater strength it needs to carry it. Now, when it comes to subjective vision, let's say you want to carry a subject or bring something to fruition, or you're an inventor who want to invent something, right? All I'm saying is we have the opportunity to experience different states of our being, and if we're suffering from a specific state of mind, we got to realize, like, how long are we going to stay in a subjective Iron Man suit of our own weakness? That means you have a privilege to see this world as your ally or as your enemy. And there's even this old adage where they say, like, the easiest way to get rid of an enemy is to make it your friend. And so human beings in the state of consciousness they're in now, they're fighting and they think they're different and they got to compete. But if in greater states of consciousness there were bigger celestial issues, like if the species was being invaded, the internal species civil war would stop. So what it is scale. Our civilization is just trying to be maybe like a couple steps ahead of the people. It's not trying to be as far steps advanced. Because when it's a decision of a fictional level. So what it is like if you're trying to advance something, non-fictional expectation. But if you want to do something that has never been before, it's another way of saying there needs to be an exertion, an expression of effort that has not been there before. So you have to evoke that power. Now that power is evoked if the internal authorization is there. If whoever you are listening to me right now, tomorrow wake up and just be, from the moment you wake up, be like, I'm an advanced being and I'm going to experience an advanced day. I'm going to experience the most advanced human beings. Why not? We're in a world where there's so many options, so many levels to jump for. Who says that the human species should not get to see how advanced it can be before it closes its eyes? I'm not a person who's saying we're not going to go extinct. I'm someone who's saying that we should see the humanity's greatest performance and retaliation against the void before it is consumed by the void, before it becomes it. We are here to show the universe how great it can be in one moment. For when we stop fearing the unknown, we give ourselves an ability to know things in new ways. And don't fear the unknown. Life is kind of like, 50% known, 50% unknown. There's moments where you feel like a strategist on a hill where everything's going to plan, and then there's moments where you realize you were a soldier rather than a strategist. So different things, different states move. People say life gives you what you deserve. but I also think life also gives people what it requires from them, kind of like power. Again, this fictional character called Goku in Dragon Ball Z, he was saying power comes when there's a need, not when there's a need for it, not a desire, right? And so human beings right now are conditioned to desire lives they don't have and then try to be them. But you have to understand, if the inner authorization isn't there, how can you be something externally? That means if I suddenly imagine me being like, yo, I don't deserve to speak. I don't even deserve to exist. Why am I even existing? I should just go, just get rid of myself, right? Like, I could have that attitude and stop all the things I've been putting energy in. Or I could be like, who says? I'm alive once, the species is evolving, we don't know anything. It's like so many things are being updated. People are not like machines that have 100% stability in all moments. And even though if they act like they have 100% stability, they stop becoming human. There's certain levels, there's certain things that have to be preserved. If you act in a specific dimension too much, you become that dimension. I experienced this the hard way, right? I realized that, especially when it came to these 10,000 talks, I realized that I am slowly converting myself into being a being that is way more comfortable being a mind than a body. And so that alarmed me, and now I don't know, trying to be a physical entity. When you're younger, you want to be spiritual. When you're older, you're like, yo, it's a round circle. You begin to realize to be a materialistic entity is one of the most advanced spiritual experiences, If you know your inner witness, if you know that what is looking through your eyes is unknown, you can relax about the unknown. But if you think that it has to be known all the time, most likely you're afraid. So the human species has to slowly come out of paranoia and start trusting the visions of its civilization. As civilization, the expansion of consciousness takes place. Hopefully these lectures contribute. I have envisioned it. The songs of the advanced civilization are going to begin. What you see, whoever you are listening, what you see me talking about in these Mr. Within talks, I have expected 100 years. I've given it that time limit, but in a period of 100 years, you're going to see every archetype in society talk about the advanced civilization. You're going to see politicians talk about the advanced civilization. You're going to see people who will develop, will understand, their identities. Like, you don't know how it is. Like, there's moments where I close my eyes and my mind gives me an image of how many people in the future who have not been born yet, who will be born only for the purpose of advancing the civilization. Just like we create jobs in the outer realms for people, like entrepreneurs, similarly, let's say people who've been philosophers, it's like we need to create archetypal roles and positions for the advanced humanity. We need to hilariously create archetypal positions or create jobs in the inner realms subjectively. So we need to have new ways to subjectively acknowledge the object. And this is why human beings, they suddenly light up when you give them a compliment, because for a second you change the subjective angle the person has on themselves, But at the same time, people want worthy opponents, People have respect for those who they feel are equal to. Sometimes. Sometimes they don't, actually. I mean, I have a twin brother, which is, anybody, I mean, I think maybe this is for male twins, right? But if you're a male twin, it's kind of like, you signed up for a Fight Club since your birth, Let me tell the viewers something hilarious. When me and my twin brother were young, my parents would leave the house, and then we would get into an argument and we would physically fight. Okay? Like we didn't even have a sense. Like we wouldn't watch fights on TV or anything, but we would fight, and my parents would come home, and like the house, like we were so busy fighting that we hadn't realized like we were destroying the house somewhere. Do you know? And you know, as twins, when you're fighting, if one of you suddenly hits hard and the other person gets hurt, the fight instantly stops. You know? The archetypes change. So, anyways, thanks for listening. And whoever you are, be playful with the world. Because that's what power does, right? People fight because they're powerless or because they need power. But once you have power, imagine we were a species of 8 billion powerful beings. Like we would be like, we're all powerful. Let's see what we can build with our power rather than testing our power on each other. Do you know? And we have to be careful because sometimes culture might not be capable of seeing who you are accurately to value you. The people around you might not be capable of seeing the things you're seeing to be able to know how to know you properly even. You know? But anyways, it comes with attitude. This is the biggest realization I've had, and as someone who is, you know, envisioning like marriage in the future, I just realized at some point we gotta decide that we have to find contentment with our own decisions. Yeah. If you don't have contentment with your decision, you treat yourself as an incomplete system. You know, sometimes I think human beings, or every human being on the planet, I mean, sure, if there's biological damage to the brain, that's a special case. But if there isn't biological damage to the brain, and human beings are, let's say, you know, behaving tragically, it's honestly like we're all advanced beings, but our approach to what the world has to mean turns our attitude into a barrier against our, let's say, greater attitude. You know, who knows? You know, who knows? Maybe, you know, imagine. Whatever. Here, I was gonna say something about myself, but whatever. Anyways, let's end the talk. Thanks for listening. When the human species shifted its attitude, great things happened because it saw new ways that it could be the human species. The biggest problems of humanity are there's many problems. If you're a conscious entity, if you're capable of helping out, go help out, you know. And the species will honor you because there's conclusions of where everything is going. In the future, we might have access to all of our memories. Like right now, I'm giving these Mr. Within talks. Who knows? Maybe in the future, somehow, from just my voice, like maybe they could recreate my DNA. Like thousands of years from now or something. I don't know. Like, what it is I acknowledge that I am a presence. And when there's people to talk to, I become a personality. There's, you know, the personhood it's that state of mind. But moments when I'm alone, I'm just a presence. I'm a presence. I'm a presence of how the universe is being. Just one moment of it. And that is, I don't know why, but to me it's a very beautiful feeling. To know that your mind and body are changing in the space of your presence. That means imagine treating your body and mind and everything as if like you're there to be their guide. You know, it's hilarious. It's like the body is a toddler and the mind and soul are like the parents helping it, you know. Or you know what it is? It's like the soul are the parents, the mind is the older siblings, and the body is like the youngest sibling. You know, the older siblings help it until the older siblings don't know how to help it, and then let's say the parents know how to help it. So I keep saying it's the end of the talk, and I'm talking. I gotta change my attitude. Can you imagine, you know, in the future, I could just like, imagine I give the 10,000 talks and I'll be like, all right, guys, I actually gave one long talk, but it has 10,000 parts. Oh, man. Here, let me read one last quote from Michael Jordan. Let's bring a champion here. My attitude is that if you push me towards something that you think is a weakness, then I will turn that perceived weakness into a strength. And this is the value of honesty, guys. You know, you may be honest with your friend, and your friend may dislike you, but at least you've given them the opportunity to convert their weakness, to be conscious of their weakness at least. So if anybody thinks I have weaknesses, just write it down in the comment section. You know? I'll add it to the list of the weaknesses I think I have. You know, it's just... But anyways, we're here to have life change us so we can learn how to change with the world, I guess. Rise, mankind, rise. Thanks for listening. Much blessings and awesome.